Hi, in this video I will show the things changed in version 1.18 of Flightplan Visualizer. Initially I had something completely different planned for version 1.18, and while I have worked for those plans, they are not nearly completion, far from that exactly. However, now that Microsoft have released Microsoft Flight Simulator, and many of us have started to use this platform, and combined with Pete Dawson having released MkRwy's version 5 with support for Microsoft Flight Simulator, in this version I have instead made it possible for you to use the program with multiple different simulators. From the ground up, the program have not been prepared for this purpose. However, in this version, I have made a lot of changes that makes it easy for you to use the program with different simulators, which means having different data files. For example, right now the data file you see visualized here is based on data from Microsoft Flight Simulator. That means all the scenery that have been scanned by MkRwy. Also in this version, the database have had a major updates. The number of airports and the number of helipads in the database have more than doubled in this version, and also a lot of the data have been revised. So all of the airports available in the Microsoft Flight Simulator plus a lot extra is included in this file. So that means if you download scenery that have airports that are currently not in Microsoft Flight Simulator, chances are that this new database will have data for it already. The data scanned from MkRwy's contains information about the database, like the CAO code, the name of the airport, and so on. But it does not contain information about the time zone, the transition altitude. This video will contain two major parts. In the first part, I will show how you can use Flightplan Visualizer with multiple simulators. And the second part, I will show the few additional things added in this version. As I said in the intro, Flightplan Visualizer have not been made to support multiple simulators. However, in this version, I have made some settings and some arguments for starting the program that makes it easy to switch between having different databases for different simulators. For example, if you go to the setting, here you have an entry field for entering where to look for the files generated by MkRwy's. In the previous version, this was simply an entry field where you could manually enter the path, paste it if you had it, or simply click this button to browse for it. In this version, this entry field have been replaced by a combo box that remembers the last 5 settings. So you can manually, here you see I have, these are my data files for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Sorry, my MkRwy's files. And these are my MkRwy's files scanned from prepared. So once I have set up the program to use these, it remembers them so I can easily switch between them. However, there is a smarter way to do that in this version, and that's by using a parameter. So let's close down the simulator, and before I do that, I will go and disable my flight plans to have it start quicker. It does not need to reload all the flight plans to show this. So now my flight disappears, and you can see I have no flight plans. So I close the program. Here on my desktop I have placed the shortcut for starting this program, and I choose to edit it, and by choosing properties, and you can enter /? or /help, and when you do so, starting the program, it will now show the arguments that can be used to this shortcut to start the program. And the one I want to use now is this /MkRwy. that lets me specify where it should look for the files generated by MkRwy. Normally, when you start Flightplan Visualizer, it will use the path entered in your settings. But by adding this argument, we can force it to use another folder instead. And I'm just told that when I use that parameter, the program will not start. So what I will do is I will put this normal shortcut to the side. I will just remove this question mark. And I will copy it. And let's say this one is for the one we want to use for prepared. So I just call it like this. And I choose to edit properties. And then I want to enter that slash MkRwy. And you see here, sorry, that was the wrong one. Here I have, this is my path for my prepared version 4.5 directory where I have these files. So this is the path I want to use. I have already copied this path. So what I do is I simply copy it and paste it in here. As you can see, it's first you have all the path to start the program. Then I have a slash MkRwy equals. And because this path have a space in it, you must put it in double quotes. I would say it's good practice to always do it. So let's just hit OK. And now I double click it to start Flightplan Visualizer. It still needs to load all the databases, but the flight plans will not be loaded as I disable all of those. And if I choose, I press Control A to search for an airport, and I choose this one, MkRwy, Aalborg, Denmark. You can see here the data here that have been scanned by MkRwy are based on scenery from VDAN design of this airport. And if we look at the gates, you can see I have 4 gates down here, and these gates have a radius of 18 meters. This is the main terminal at Aalborg. So let's shut down and let's make a new. And this one is for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I edit that as well. And here again, I want to insert the path for where I have my MkRwy's generated files for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So again, I have prepared an argument to add. And again, it's the slash MkRwy. In this case, there's no space, so the double quotes are not necessary. But as I said before, it's good practice to add them. And when I start Flightplan Visualizer with this parameter, it will use some different MkRwy's files. I can still search for Aalborg, but you can see now it's the default Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery. And if we look for the gates, you can see we no longer have any gates down here. However, we have a lot more up here, and they're much smaller. So in this case, the Microsoft's Flight Simulator scenery for Aalborg is quite inaccurate, because this is the main terminal, and they put a lot of general aviation aircraft up here. You have some gates here also and up here, but it's all of them are small 7 meters general aviation gates. But by adding these two different arguments to the program, I can now start the same program and it have the same data files. For example, all the data files I supply with the program that contains information about airports and about aircraft types and countries and so on. Those data are shared between these two programs, but at least now they start up with different data about the airport regarding the data extracted by MkRwy. Let's look at another airport. For example, here we look at Kastrup, Copenhagen, EKCH. And right now I have started the program with the prepared folder. So this is my prepared scenery for Copenhagen, a flight Tampa. And you can see I have marked it as one of my favorite airports. I have classified its rank and traffic density. I have entered a hint text shown when hovering the mouse over the airport marker. Here I have some data that I used in the past to enter comments for this airport. If I go to the gates tab, you can see that some of the gates are marked with a yellow outline. These are the gates I have marked as my favorites. If I right click a gate and say edit gate info, you can see here you can mark it as a favorite and you can enter a text, a comment. And when there is a comment that is shown in the hint window as the last line, for example, this one has not a comment, so the last line is the GPS position. And here I have that comment for that gate. All of these data are based on this current scenery that's for prepared. So all these information I don't want to have when I use Flightplan Visualizer from Microsoft Flight Simulator. And therefore I would like to have different user files because these data are contained in the user file. If I close this window and in the file menu choose open user data folder, I close the program because we don't need it running now. You can see the information we saw before about favorite airports and gates and so on. It's contained in this user airport info file. And this file I would like to split in two versions, have one for prepared and one for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I'll make a copy. And this copy I rename. I prefix it by pre3d and an underscore. This is the version I want for prepared. Also, I want a copy for Microsoft Flight Simulator, so again I make a copy. And prefix MSFS and an underscore. Right now it's a simple copy of the file, so it contains all the data. So I would want to remove all the data I don't need. So right click it and I have a Notepad++ installed. So here's the file. It's very important that you keep the first line, the header, and you keep this outer tag, but the rest we delete. So I press and hold shift and I click here. You see I keep this bottom tag, I press delete. And I can remove this blank line and save it. So I have kept the header line, the first line, and I have kept this outer tag that say user airport infos with an S. And in between I would have all those that were for specific airports, but now it's emptied. So I have these two files. The one for, sorry, I made a mistake here. I should delete this part. So I have these two files, but I need to tell Flightplan Visualizer which file to use. And we use the FilePrefix parameter for that. So if we add the /? again to this one and double click it, you can see we have this /FilePrefix. In this case, my prefix will not contain spaces, so I will enter it without the double quotes. So I edit this one for prepared, choose the properties, and go to the end, and enter FilePrefix equals pre3d. As you saw, the file we added pre3d and an underscore, but you don't add the underscore to the prefix. The program will automatically add that underscore. And I click OK. In the same way, we choose properties for this one. Jump to the end, make a space. File prefix equal MSFS. And click OK. So now I started for prepared. It will load the file that was prefixed with the pre3d. So when I search Copenhagen now and go to the, you can see here it have the data like before we had here, and all my favorite gates are marked as my favorites. So we close down the program and we choose the one for with the parameter for using the file we made, the empty file we made for MSFS. And I press Ctrl A and search Copenhagen. Now you see it's no longer marked as a favorite. It haven't got a rank, a traffic density, hint text, no comments, and no gates are marked as for my favorites. So now I can go in. This one was the one I had marked for the 747 in the previous one. And since this is also based on scenery for Copenhagen, it have a gate down here that's large enough to take the 747, so I could mark this one as my favorite also. I forgot what the gate was called in the previous version, but if it's based on the real airport, they might have the same gate number and name, but it could be different. So I would like to have an empty file. I can start again to mark which airport would be my favorites and so on. And the way you handle this is by using that file prefix parameter. When you use that file prefix parameter, it's showed here in the top. So if you are doubting if you started the correct one, you can see it up here. For example, now it's a Microsoft Flight Simulator. And this one, starting the program with the pre3d prefix, it will show pre3d in the caption bar of the program instead, so you know which files you have loaded. As you can see, there are many files in this folder. All of those LSH are my last searches I have done with the leg search feature. I have saved some favorite aircraft and so on. These you cannot prefix, but all of most of these XML files here, you have an XML file for for MkRwy. But all of these user files you can prefix. For example, this one, I have all my user aircraft, as I showed in the video for version 117, where I introduced user aircraft. You can make your own owned aircraft and your own aircraft types. These I would share between the simulators, so I will not prefix this file. It means when I make a aircraft type, that type will both be available whether I use this icon or this icon to start the program, because that file is not in two versions. When you use that file prefix tag, it will first look for a file that contains this prefix, and if such a file does not exist, it will take the normal file name. So in this case, I will not prefix this file because I want to share it between both MSFS and prepared. The same with my airline info. The program comes with an airline database, but you have the option to make your own airlines in case you need some airlines that is not in the database I supply. And again, if I make a user airline, I would like that airline to be available both for Prepared and Microsoft Flight Simulator, so I will not prefix this file either. This is the user airport we just prefixed, so this file will only be used if starting the program without these two file prefixes, so I will keep this file. You can see it as a backup of the one up here. These are my airport redirects. I will get back to this later, but let's prefix it anyway now, and I will describe later why and how we use it. So again, like before, I make a copy. I remove this copy and I enter pre3D like that. And I want to make a copy for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And remove this. I had 2 dots here. And like before, I want to keep the content of the file for my user direct I made for Prepared, because that's for that simulator. But this one I want to have an empty version. So again, I choose to edit it, keep the top line, keep the outer tags, and remove everything in between. And save it. So now I have that file available in 2 versions also. Let's look at another way of using the file prefix. Close this window and start it. As I just told, I want to use my user aircraft, the same file for both simulators. So when I choose this menu item, user aircraft, here I have created all the flyable aircraft I have for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And down here I've created all my aircraft that is available for Prepared. As you see, I have a column here that tells me which aircraft is active. And what it means is when I go into Control L, the leg search feature, and if I want to say I only want those with own substitute and so on, if you don't know what this is, look the video recorded for version 117. But this search down here will only search with these criteria, will only include active aircrafts. So I want to set these active when I use the program for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in that case, I want these to be inactive, and vice versa. If I start the program with the pre3D parameter, I want these to be active and these up here to be inactive. Right now, all my MSFS aircraft are active and all my Prepared is inactive. What I can do is I can select them all. I can right click. I can choose I want to toggle the active ones. So those that were active before are now inactive, and these down here are set active. However, there is now in this version an easier way to do it. I can go into an aircraft and I can enter this auto activation prefix. And I want this aircraft to be active when I start the program with the MSFS parameter. Prefix. So I can enter that MSFS and save it. And now when I start the program with this prefix, it will go through all aircraft and look at all owned aircraft and look at the prefix. This one is the only one with a prefix, so it's set active. All the rest are untouched because they don't have that parameter. I want to have that prefix set for all my MSFS aircrafts. I could edit one of the time, but I can choose from the menu, this one, and say I want to add a prefix. Let's choose this one up here also. It's not necessary, but I want to add this MSFS prefix. This one already had it, so it's not added a second time. It sees it already have this prefix. You can enter multiple prefixes by using a comma. In the same way, we can go down here and say this one, we want to add a prefix, but instead we want to enter pre-3D, and you enter it without the you saw when we make the file names, we had to enter an underscore, but that program automatic enter the underscore. You don't use that underscore here. The prefix for the shortcut on the desktop is without that underscore. So if I double click one of the files, you can see now that this prefix have been added. So if I start the program again, and here you can see we started with the MSFS prefix. So now when I open the program, all aircraft with this prefix are set active. All aircraft that have a prefix that is different are set inactive. So when I go in here, user aircraft, you see now all my Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft are active. All my prepare aircraft are inactive. Shutting the program down and starting the one using the pre-3D prefix, it will toggle these activation check marks. So again, when I go in here, user aircraft, now these are inactive and these are active. So this is another way to use the prefix. In this part of the video, we are going to look at the airport redirection. I will first start the program with the pre-3D parameter. And as you remembered previously, we split that file into two versions. We have airport redirect for MSFS that we made empty. And then we have an airport redirect where we kept the current data. So if I go into Flightplan and edit auto airport redirects, I have all these redirect data that I have used in the past for prepared. The way it works is when you import a flight plan, and that flight plan have flights in and out of an airport, you can redirect it to another airport. For example, many of the AIG flight plans that have traffic in and out of Pristina airport used this ICAO code, but this ICAO code did not exist in Prepared. Instead, Prepared had this ICAO code. So by having this redirect here, all flights in and out of that airport have been redirected. Right now we have disabled all flight plans. So let's re-enable them. And it's the one I use normally is the BizJet and my commercial. And now all these flight plans will be loaded. So if I hit Control A, LYPR, you see it does not find this airport because there's no traffic into it. Let's just look at that ICAO code once more. BKPR. And if we go to the traffic tab, and I choose this one, all flights, you will see we now have a lot of traffic into this airport, and this is thanks to the redirection. However, this redirection will have to change for Microsoft Flight Simulator. A lot of these ICAO codes that was in use in Flight Simulator X and Prepared was outdated, and they used the wrong ICAO code. For example, Johannesburg in Africa, it used to use this ICAO code many years ago, but recently it changed to this one. And for that reason, it's a good idea to make a redirection. If you want to know more about this redirection and the form I'm going to show you later, you can go into the video I recorded for version 1.12 of Flightplan Visualizer. It explains how this redirection is working and how to use it. But let's start it with the Microsoft Flight Simulator parameter instead. Now it takes a longer time to start because now I have enabled all the flight plans, so it adds about 5 to 6 seconds to the load time. But already here it's done, and because we emptied that file in Notepad, when I go into this menu items, you'll see I have no redirections. So the first step I want to do is reprocess all my flight plans. Since I don't have any redirection, I want to revert the traffic back to its default ICAO code. For example, all the flight plans that in the past used LYPR for Pristina, I want to revert back, and I do it by choosing this point. All that was automatic redirected, I want to restore them, and I want to do it for all of these flight plans. So I simply click process, and it will tell me all those that previously was redirected have been reverted back to its previous version. So I click OK. I close this one. It will reload all the flight plans. And now I will have to figure out which redirection I would have to make now that's suitable for the data contained in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And then again, I will go into this form where I can edit my redirects, and then I will generate a report. It takes some time, but what it does is it goes through all the airports, and it finds out that flight plans that reference an airport that might not exist, and it lists some other airports that perhaps are better suitable. Instead of looking at the data in this window, I copy it to the clipboard. We have that here. I'll make a new one, paste it in. This window I'll close. Then I move this one to the top and make it a bit smaller, and I move in this window. And I make it a bit wider. So let's go to the top. Up here, and again, it will be explained in that video for version 1.12, but up here it tells me when the report was generated. It tells me that this asterisk means the airport is a pseudo airport. If there are 2 asterisks, that it's a pseudo airport that is not in use. This arrow is indicating a redirection, and the word auto or man tells me if it's a manual or automatic redirection. And let's look at in the airport, for example. I have some flight plans that have a traffic in and out of an airport with an ICAO code of 07C. And this asterisk tells me it's an pseudo airport, meaning it's an airport that does not exist with that ICAO code in Microsoft Flight Simulator. However, it tells me that there is an airport with this ICAO code, and the distance between these two is 0 nautical miles. So probably this is an airport that did not have an official ICAO code in the past, but now it does. So I want all traffic that used to go in and out of this one to go in and out of this one instead. So what I can do is I can copy the ECAO code up here, say from, and copy this ECAO code and paste as 2 and add it to the list. So now all traffic that used to go into that airport will be redirected to this airport instead. If I look at the data we generated before, it shows all airports within 20 nautical mile. In this case, you can see the name of those two airports match, so it is the same airport. But had this one not been here, I could have chosen another alternative one instead. If I scroll down a bit further, you can see that it's actually 3 different flight plans that have traffic in and out of that airport. So what I can do is I can save this one. I can go in here and choose reprocess and say normally I choose I want to restore all and I want to redirect automatic. And I click reprocess and I get this report, and you can see now that this flight plan had traffic into this airport, but now it's automatically being redirected into this one. So now that one airport is taken care of. And when it's finished loading the airports, I go in here again, and I will go through this list and do the same. For example, this one also, 19 Alpha. I have an airport with an ICAO code. The distance is 0 nautical miles, and you can see it's the same name. So I want all traffic for 19 Alpha to be redirected to this one instead. I add it to the list, and so on. I contain through all this list, but there's no reason for you to see that. Thanks to video editing, I'm now finished, and as you can see, there are quite a few redirects. So I hit OK to save it, and now I can go in and choose to reprocess my flight plans. When I do it manually like this, I want to say I want to restore all of those that was automatic redirected, and afterwards I want to redirect them again according to that list I just made. And down here it counts how many redirects it's doing. So quite a few of the flight plans are now being updated according to these redirects. In most cases, you only need to set up your redirects once. In theory, you should check every time you install third-party scenery, because in some cases you want to redirect airports according to airports you have. In this case, I redirected all that had the wrong ICAO code, either because a wrong ICAO code was used in the flight plans I imported, or because the real-life ICAO code have changed in this new scenery in a Microsoft Flight Simulator. So what I can choose to do is to generate, after I have redirected all my airports, I can choose to generate the redirect report once again. Doing so, I still get a fairly large report, but still it's a lot less than the one that I generated before. And I see here I skipped this one AEP. It's nope, sorry, my bad. Instead, I see I have this AIC still active. It's because I have not restarted my flight simulator. These pseudo airports, those listed with an asterisk, are generated when you load a flight plan that use an airport that does not exist. In that case, it will create that airport in memory based on the data I have in the data file I supply with the software. You're told here it's a non-flight simulator airport, meaning it's not part of the data extracted by MkRwy's. But we have a GPS position, we have a time zone, we have a country, we have a name, and we have a city of this airport. And this is thanks to the database I supply with the software. So before I generate this report again, I should close down and start Flight Simulator. It's because now that pseudo airport should no longer exist in memory unless other flight plans are still connecting to this airport. So now when I go in and generate the reports, you see that particular airport is no longer listed in the report. It's because, as I told, that pseudo airport was removed from memory. But still, there are some airports we cannot do anything about. For example, this one. It's listed with an asterisk, meaning it's a pseudo airport. It does not exist in my Microsoft Flight Simulator data. And the nearest airport is 15.2 nautical miles distant from this. And it's two completely different airports. It's up to you if you want to make a redirection for this airport. But I would personally not do so because they're so far away. This one example, it's also listed as a pseudo airport. We don't have scenery for it. We're told here it's a non-flight simulator airport. But there are no other airports within 20 nautical miles of this one. And the same with the next one. We don't have any nearby airports. We can see here which flight plan that's utilizing this airport. This one, it's relative close. Again, it's up to you if you want to redirect and use this airport instead of this one. But anyway, this is how you use the redirection. And now I have redirected all my traffic according to the this redirection table that I made. Normally, right now I have redirected all my airports according to Microsoft Flight Simulator. So if you want to do it manually, if I start this one from prepared, since we prefixed the redirection file, it will now load a different redirection table. However, all our flight plans are still using the other one because we have not reprocessed them. So in theory, we had to go in here and say now we switch to pre-3D where we used MSFS before. You should in theory go in here and say restore all and redirect all and then run this process. However, there is an easier way to do it. Instead of you having to remember to do this, there is now a new check mark in the settings. This one, auto reprocess flight plans on FilePrefix change. That means if I start Flightplan Visualizer using a different prefix than I used the time before, it will run this process. So starting as Microsoft Flight Simulator, I'm now using a different prefix than before. So in the background, while it loads all the data, it will also run that reprocess function. So if we go in here and show the log, you can see that it have actually saved all these flight plans as part of the startup. And if we go to the top, we can see that it have started this reprocess job, and it automatic reprocess all flight plans. It added 3.5 seconds to the startup because it had to do this as part of the startup procedure. but it only does so if we are starting with another prefix than we used the last time. Right now I started with the MSFS prefix. If I close the program down and again started with the same prefix, again we are loading all the databases and all the flight plans, but at least this time we are not running the redirect process, and we can see that looking in the log that all those lines we saw before is no longer listed because we did not do a redirection. However, starting with this parameter, again we load all the data and we load all the flight plans, but we this time also starting it with a different file prefix than the last time. Hence, again, it will run that reprocess according to the redirection settings. So looking at the log again, we can see all these flight plans being saved. And going to the top, we can see this reprocess job have been started. So it's an easy way for you to, again, have two different icons and have the data available for you when you start the simulator. Sorry, when you start the Flightplan Visualizer. So now choosing this icon for Microsoft Flight Simulator, when I have started the program, all my favorite airports will be marked as I want them for Microsoft Flight Simulator. All my redirections have been executed according to this one I made for Microsoft Flight Simulator. All of my aircrafts have been enabled, have been set active for Microsoft Flight Simulator and so on. So these things made here in version 1.18 makes it easy for you to, as I have shown you here, have two different icons that start the program with different parameters, which allows you to load different data. And as we looked before, we have these two parameters. The first one, MkRwy, we tell it where to look for the files generated by MkRwy, which means our airport information about gates, about runways, and so on are extracted from the correct scenery. And this file prefix ensures us it's the correct files we are loading from the user directory. The last thing I want to tell is one file I forgot to rename. I wrote it in the bottom here. It was the file for my favorite favorite aircrafts. So opening this window, you see this one user favorite aircraft types. I want to split that also to both have the P3D underscore prefix and the MSFS underscore prefix, which would allow me to set up my favorite aircraft different for the two simulators. In this case, those you see marked here as my favorites are according to my aircraft in P3D, and many of these aircraft I don't have in Microsoft Flight Simulator. For example, all my Boeings that I have as PMDG aircraft, I don't have as flyable aircraft in MSFS. Hence, I would not want to mark them as favorites. And as you perhaps remember that aircraft you have chosen as your favorite, you can quickly here choose no one and say check all my favorites, and then only look for flight plans for these favorite aircraft. For example, all my favorites aircraft flying into Copenhagen Airport. Another thing I forgot to mention, in this version I greatly improved the leg search, as you saw here. Pressing search, you now almost have the correct answer. It has run the process very quickly. It's been improved by a factor of 70. I noticed it took almost 17 seconds to run before, but now it's very quick due to the changes. In this last part of the video, I'll show the few odd things that made their way into this release. As I said in the beginning, I had something completely planned for version 118, but this version ended up being for support for multiple simulators. But a few other things was changed, as you just saw before. The leg search have been greatly improved, and as I said before, also the database have the airport database bundled with the program has almost doubled in more than doubled in size and number of supported airports and helipads. Another thing that changed is the exclusion of runways. For example, pressing Control A and choosing, for example, this airport in Denmark. In the past, this check mark excludes small and grass dirt runways was always enabled, meaning in this case this airport have both big and small runways. So if I click this one, I can see the small runways also, and small is defined by being less than 3,000 feet. But that meant if you looked at the information for an airport that only had small runways, you would not see them. You would have to click this one to remove the check mark. For example, we have this one is. Oh, I don't think it's this one. No. Here it is. This one, you see the runways are only 1,495 feet long. And you would, in previous version, you would have to, you had this check mark, you would have to uncheck it before you were able to see these data. And this reminds me that when you scan the scenery with Make Runways, it will normally exclude all runways less than 1,500 meters. So this information about this runway will not be included in the data that Make Runway extracts. However, you can force it to add these by adding a parameter. When I now run with this parameter slash greater than 1,000. It means that it will actually include all runways greater than 1,000 feet. You should not set this number too low because some scenery creators are making some ghost runways. To my knowledge, it's in order to have the AI traffic function correctly. So if you set this number too low, you would start to import information about these ghost runways. I have set mine to 1,000 feet, and I have not looked at very many airports, but so far I have not had an issue with ghost runways. But anyway, returning to this check mark, in this version in settings, you can now set the value of this check mark. If you want it to work as it always worked, you should set it to always, because they were always excluded in previous versions. But you can set them to never exclude, or you can set it to automatic. When you set it to automatic, it will look at the airport in question. And returning to this one, since it only have small runways, it will not be set to exclude those. Choosing an airport like Carp, as we also looked at, since it have large runways, it will exclude those small ones. But it will you can still manually enable them if you want to. choosing, for example, Aalborg, it will remove this check mark to tell you there are no small ones. So putting this check mark will not change anything, but at least you don't have to click it in order to see are there any small runways here. So I think most of you want it to be automatic, and that's the default value. But if you want to change it, go into the settings form and do so. Another thing changed in this version also is the window for searching for airports. I have now added this list here below because in case you want to find some challenging flights for you, for example, say I want to find only airports that have runways at a certain length, for example, no longer than 1500 feet. You can set so, or you can go in here and set the elevation, for example, 12,000 feet. Only include airports that where the altitude is larger than 12,000 feet. Okay, I have something to look into. I see that. And also you can choose specific types of runways. For example, if you want only to fly into, if you want to fly flights with general aviation flights, flying bush flights, you can say I only want to fly into airports where all the runways are soft, meaning they're grass or dirt or something like that. You can filter by that in this version. Also, you can filter by the last one, by distance. For example, if I have set my heart, I want to fly in and out of Carb, as we looked before. I can say I want to find all airports that are distant between 20 and 50 nautical miles from Carb. I can set that up in this version. To remove this one, you can simply click it and then press escape without choosing anyone, and these two fields becomes disabled, meaning that they're not active. So that's the new filtering in this airport search function. When I have set up the data file for airport information, one of the things that's hard for me to find is correct information about the transition altitude. For many airports, I know the transition altitude and I have set it up. For example, for Carb, I have set it up to 3,000 feet, and I know it's 3,000 feet. So it's shown like that. But for some airports, I don't know it. For example, MkRwy. This airport, I do not know what the transition altitude is. So new in this version is it will try to estimate it. And you see that by this asterisk shown here. And also when you hover the mouse over it, it will show like here a tooltip showing that it's an estimated transition altitude. And the way the program find this estimation is it looks at the nearby airports for which it have a known transition altitude, and then it will look weighted on those different transition altitudes if they are different, and then try to see that what the transition altitude is in a nearby airport, and then it will list that as an estimated. It is not perfect and it cannot be perfect, but at least it's, in my opinion, it's better than just showing a zero. But at least you're notified that this is an estimated transition altitude. if any of you see any errors in the transition altitudes, or if any of you have data for this, I would happy add them to the database. But as of now, we at least have an estimated transition altitude. So these are the things in version 1.18, and as you have seen, the most important changes is regarding support for multiple simulators. Thank you.